Hello everyone, welcome back to day 19 of 40 days of JavaScript. Can't believe that we are going to hit the 50% mark of 40 days of JavaScript initiative. Today in this session, you are going to learn about a very important topic from JavaScript is called events. Without events, your web pages are really not dynamic. So we are going to learn about events. We are going to learn about how to make it in practice. We'll be doing projects. We'll be taking assignments, a lot about it. Before we do that, a request from me and tapaScript will be please support this channel. If you are thinking that my content is good, please subscribe to tapaScript, post like, provide comments, let me know what you think about 40 days of JavaScript. All right, so what is event? How do you define it? If we talk about event, especially the browser event, think it like a signal that something had happened in the browser. It is as if someone has come to your house and knocking the door. That's the event. Now it is up to you who is inside the house to choose whether to open the door or not. So this capability of you choosing whether to open the door or not is called responding to the event. For JavaScript's browser event as well, we can respond to the event using something called an event handler. We are going to see that in practice. Some of it you have already seen it, some of it you have already practiced as part of last two videos, but now is the time to take a deep down with it. First thing first, let us see what are we going to cover today. We already spoke about what is an event. Now we'll be taking examples from the browser point of view. Then we will be learning how to handle event and why it is important to handle event. How to handle event from markup, how to handle event from script. Then we'll be talking about add event listener, remove event listener, two very important aspects, especially when you have learned DOM. Now you will appreciate add event listener, remove event listener even more. Then we'll be learning about something called DOM content loaded. We will do an anatomy of the event object, like what is there inside event object. If you are following 40 days of JavaScript and if you have seen my video on exception handling, I have explained a bit about it, like what is there inside the event object. But now, in the context of DOM and event, we are going to see that. Now, very important topic is event capturing and bubbling. Many developers are confused about what is event bubbling, what is event capturing, and how it helps in event delegation. So, you're going to see all these things together: bubbling, capturing, and delegation. We'll be seeing how the browser behaves by default on an event and how and why we should be tweaking that particular behavior. We will also learn how to create custom events. On browser, there are plenty of default events that you can use for your keyboard action, for your mouse action, for your gestures, but you still need to know how to create custom events, because once your application grows and you are getting into the complex use case solving, you will be creating custom events for sure. Then I'll be doing a project, and after that I'll give you a task assignments that also will be a project. So let's get started. I'm sure that you must be very excited to go with me, learn about events. Most importantly, you will enjoy it more if you do hands on with me. So get your laptop, get your PC, whatever you have in front of you, get the VS Code open, and let's get started. So let us get started with the definition of event. What is an event? An event is just a signal that something happened in the browser. Let's say someone click on a button. Someone type something on the input box. Someone select something from the select box. Someone selected an option from a checkbox or a radio button. Each of these things are a signal that something has got changed or something happened on the browser. Now, once that signal comes, as a programmer, as a coder, as a JavaScript developer, it is up to us how to handle that or whether to handle that or not. If we have to handle that, we have to write a function, because when someone is doing an on click or someone is typing on the text box, to provide the functionality for that click, to provide that functionality for that typing, we have to define something called an handler in terms of a function. So this is how the event happens and we handle the event. Let us see some of the examples first. In index.html file, I already have a h1 and a p tag. As we'll be doing a lot of coding today, let me create different sections on my HTML so that I can separate things out. So I'm creating a section with a divider, horizontal rule. And because we are talking about event handling, I have created a subheading called event handling. Now to demonstrate the event part, I have added a button over here. It's a very simple button which says click me, and it has an ID called my button. Button as an element can provide multiple signals. For example, one of the signal is when user click on a button. And when user click on a button, you have to handle that click event if you want. To handle that click event, there are multiple ways you can attach an event handler. So one of the way that you can handle event is by using button's own attribute called onClick. With onClick attribute, you also need to specify that what you want to do when someone is clicking on a button. For example, if someone clicking on this click me button, I want to call a function called handle click. Now, as I have this handle click function over here, I have to define this function somewhere. The place where I'll be defining this function will be index.js file. I have already imported or loaded this index.js file over here. So I'll go to the index.js file and start write this function as function handle click, and we'll be doing a console.log to check whether this handle click happened or not. We'll say button click. Fair enough? We did that. Now, if I go back to UI, I have this click me over here. I click on click me, I get to see button click coming over here. This is one way I can define my event handler so that whenever an event happen, I can define what I want to do. But what if I want to pass some argument to this function? For example, if I take an argument, say greeting, and I change this console.log to print this greeting, button clicked with a dollar greeting. Now this handle click is an event handler that we have provided to onClick. How can I pass this? It's very easy. Let's say you want to pass hello, you can just pass hello inside the quote. Remember one thing, if you have provided double quote outside of this function name, you can only give a single quote inside it, because if you give double quote again over here, that will be a wrong or an invalid string to provide to this onClick. Okay, so this is what you need to remember. Also, another fact very important is like this onClick is not really case sensitive. Instead of giving onClick, you can also do onClick like the C capital or everything capital. It will still work. But as a convention, always make it small when you're working with plain JavaScript. Now I passed hello. Let's go back to browser once. Now, if I click on click me, I can see button clicked with a hello. So the greeting message, whatever I have passed, it is now working. So this way of event handling, it's more about event handling in markup, because in the HTML itself, we are defining what is the event that we are trying to handle and what needs to be done when this event is getting handled. And this is possible because this button element was statically created. But there will be a situation when you have to do the event handling in script itself. Let's learn that. For that purpose, I have added one more button with an ID called my button 2, and the text says click me to. If you notice here, I have not added any on click. Now, this particular button, though statically created, I am still not interested in adding an on click handler here itself. Rather, I want to do it in script itself. You can imagine a situation that this button is not added over here. Maybe with script only, with document.createElement that we have learned in the last video, we can create this button, and after getting the button instance, then we can attach an handler to it, right? So how can we achieve that? First of all, I have to access this button in my script. I have the ID, so I can do it very easily. Document.getElement by ID, pass this ID and got the element back. Now, once I get this element back, I can do like that element dot onClick equals to then the handler function, and inside this handler function I can write console.log my button to clicked. Will this work? Definitely it will work, because this my button to element is nothing but my button. On that I have added on click, and then I have defined this function over here. Let's see that. So if I click on click me to, I can see my button to clicked. So it's worked. However, there is a problem. You have defined the behavior of the click function event handler with this particular function. Now, if you want to define one more behavior, another additional behavior with this onClick methodology, you cannot do that. For example, if I copy the same thing, paste it over here, and just change this console.log my button to clicked to my button to clicked again, what it will do, it will override the previous function handler with the latest function handler. So right now, if I click on click me to, I will see my to button clicked again. I'm not going to get both the console.logs. It is because when you are defining your handler function in this fashion, the latest one is always going to override the previous one. But will you really have a need that clicking on one button, you want to take two actions? Yes, you might be, right? Once you're clicking on a button, you might want to disable the button, and then you want to download something. So there are two different actions possible. or you want to hide something in the corner of the UI, and then you are going to fetch something from your network call and want to show that. These two can be two different functionalities, and both you want to invoke. Now to mitigate that, you have to use something called addEventListener instead of the on-click way of doing it. This way of handling event is still okay, but the better way of handling event is with addEventListener. Before we go there, there are few more things that I want to call out over here. In case you are using this way of event handling, in case you are not using addEventListener, though I told that this on click on HTML is not case sensitive, you can make the C capital. But index.js, if you do on click, it is case sensitive. It has to be in the lower case. You have to keep that thing in mind. Second thing is, instead of doing this function over here, you can call any other function that is defined outside. Here I have written an inline function. This function is an anonymous function because it doesn't have any name. But you can also use a named function, for example, handle click over here. So for example, I can do my button to element dot on click equals to handle click. One thing to remember over here, that you should not pass the parenthesis like this. If you pass the parenthesis like this particular function will get executed over here itself. And as this function getting executed over here, it doesn't return anything. Basically, it will return an undefined. So your myButton.onClick will be undefined, set to undefined. But it has to ideally be set to a function, right? That's the reason you should not be putting this parenthesis, so that this function will never get executed. It is just getting referenced. It means that the value of myButton2lm.onClick is a function reference. But the question is now, handle click takes an argument. How are you going to pass this argument? If you do it like hola, it means that this particular function is going to get executed here itself, isn't it? And it is going to return you undefined. If I click here, it's not working. See, it's not printing anything. Then how are you going to mitigate this? The way that you want to mitigate this is the on click expects a function as a handler function, right? Inside that you can do anything. So basically, instead of doing it in this way, which will execute the handle click function itself, you will wrap it using another function. Either you can do it like function this way, or the better way for the single line function would be to just use an arrow function. That's it. Now on click is assigned with an arrow function. Inside the arrow function, you are having this particular code. So it means whenever somebody clicking on the button, this my button to element button, it will execute this function, and inside this function you are calling handle click with this argument. That means handle click will be invoked and it will print this console.log for you. Now it will work. Click me to yes button, click with the hola, right? So I hope you understand the difference here and some of the mistakes that usually people make. I'm hoping that after this video, after watching this, you are very well aware that what needs to be done. Now we are going to get into the next thing, which is about addEventListener, removeEventListener, because I explained that once you use this way, this property way of handling events, it is always gets overridden if there are multiple. You cannot attach multiple. Now to save from that, to fix that, the way that you will be handling it is using something called addEventListener. I have now added one more button to demonstrate the addEventListener one. The button has an ID called counter button and a text called count plus plus. I hope you can already imagine that it's a button where click on it, I'm going to probably increase some counter. That's it, right? How can I access the button over here? I can do const count button element equals to document.getElement by ID. I'm passing the count button ID. Excellent. Now on this count button element, I can invoke something called addEventListener. It takes three parameters. First two parameters are mandatory. The third one is optional. The first parameter says what kind of event you are interested in dealing with. In our case, it's a button. We're interested in dealing with a click event. So I'll pass click over here. Next, you will define what will happen when the click event happens. That means our event handler. Here you have to provide a function. So I'm providing a function over here. The third one is an optional parameter, which we're going to see when we'll be talking about event bubbling. So hold on a minute. Right now, just two is what we are going to focus on. Now over here, let me just do a console.log of something called a counter. So the counter we have to define. Let me define a counter over here and initialize it with 0. And I'll be putting counter value over here. And after that, let me just increase the counter by 1 every time somebody is clicking on it. This is an alternative way of doing on click. Here we are using addEventListener. I would suggest we use it because it has lot of advantage. One of the advantage that you're going to see right now is assigning multiple event handler for the single event. But first, let's see whether this works or not. So if I click on the count button right now, the count plus plus button, my count should increment by 1 every time I click on it. Let's go to the UI. I have this count plus plus 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's working. Excellent. Now, just like adding add event listener, there is another thing called remove event listener. We'll be talking a lot about how to write optimized code in JavaScript, but that comes toward the last module. As and when I'm teaching, I also want to call out some of the best practices. For example, if you are adding one event listener, you also need to know how to remove that event listener. If you don't remove that event listener, the event listener will be always attached to that UI element. So you need to do this cleanup yourself, and you have to make sure that you do it whenever the work with your that particular UI element is done. Maybe you are loading this script, so you are adding this event listener, then you are unloading the script and loading some other script later point in time, so the previous event listener is no more required. You need to remove it explicitly. Okay, now for removing the event listener, the function that JavaScript provides to you is called removeEventListener. Let's see that. Now on the same button, count button 11, I am going to call removeEventListener. The purpose of removeEventListener is removing this event listener. So it will first ask which event you want to remove. Okay, I am interested in removing the click event that I have added before. Then if you want to remove this event, what else you need to pass is like, what was that event handler that you had passed before you want to remove right now? Okay, so the previously I had passed this particular function as an event handler, right? Now, so second argument is, what was that event handler that you had passed before while adding this event listener? You have to pass that so that JavaScript will know that this particular event handler it has to remove. So I had passed this particular event handler, this particular function before, isn't it? So I'm copying this function and I'm pasting it over here. That's all is the syntax of remove event listener. Now what I would expect is in this line, I had added an event listener. So I was seeing that counter was happening properly. It was incrementing the count on each click of the button. But immediately after that, I'm removing the event listener. So I would expect the functionality of clicking on a button and incrementing that counter is never going to happen because I'm removing the listener immediately after adding, isn't it? So let me go to the UI, and if I click on it, I can still see it is happening. That means something is wrong. This is another mistake that beginners make, even some of the experienced people also make while doing code review or coding, that this particular function instance that we have added as part of add event listener is not same as this particular function instance, because these two are completely two different functions, isn't it? We have learned about the functions and references a lot. So this is the reason you should not be using anonymous function, inline function like this when you are defining the event handler for your event listener function. Always you should be taking this out, create a function outside, something like this. Here I have created a function now called handle count, exactly the same code, console.log counter and the counter plus plus. So now I can take this handle count and I can replace this guy over here. Similarly, I can replace it for the remove event listener as well. Now this handle count holds the same reference to the same function, and that's what I am passing to both add event listener and remove event listener. So with the add event listener, if I just comment out the remove part of it, my functionality should work as it was working before. I'm saying that it is incrementing. At the moment I am bringing the remove event listener right after add event listener, that click functionality is never ever going to work again like before. You see over here, I'm pressing the count so hard, but it is not executing and it is not printing the incremented count. So I hope now you understand how to deal with add event listener, remove event listener, how to deal with the event handler function when you are working with add event listener, remove event listener, how to make sure that you're passing the same reference so that browser knows for this particular button, for this particular click event, this particular event handler functionality I have to remove. Only because using add event listener, you can add multiple event handler function. Let's see that. Let us add one more function, a very simple function after handle count. We have a function called greet me. It's another function. Just log a console.log called thank you. That's it. So now after adding event listener for the click event, and we say that whenever the click event happen, boss, let's handle it with the handle count. Okay, we have seen that. Now I'm going to copy this guy again and then paste it over here and saying again for the same button, for the same kind of event, instead of doing handle count, can you do this greet me? And for now, I am commenting out the remove event listener. So now I have added two event listener for the same kind of same type of event on the same element to distinguish job. Again, the same example, a button, you click on it, left side it is going to show hide something, right side it is going to make a network call, fetch some data and show it for you. Previously with on click we were seeing that the second one was always overriding the previous one. In this case that won't be the case. We are going to see the output of your count incrementing. We are also going to see the output of greet me, the thank you, every time we click on this button. Want to see that? Clicking on count plus plus, you see 0 thank you, 1 thank you, 2 thank you, both are happening together. Now fun fact, if I bring back this remove event listener, what's going to happen? Look for what is it going to remove. It is going to remove handle count alone. It is not going to remove greet me. It means the event click added for this count button using this particular handler, I am removing that. I am not doing anything with the greet me. That means now onwards, if I'm clicking on that button, it is just going to stop printing count because this event handler is gone, but it will continue to greet me, isn't it? Let's click on it. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But there is no count. So I hope it is now very clear to you how to deal with add event listener, remove event listener. What is the difference between an add, remove event listener versus the direct way, the property way of handling event, and then passing the references, doing the multiple actions, all these things. So guys, please practice whatever you learned till this section. Please practice. The more you practice, the better you get at, better you understand. Just by going through the video, just by listening to me is not going to add any value to your life. It's a pure time waste. Practice, you will get back a lot of confidence on JavaScript. You will win over it. Okay, let's go to the next section. There is an event on JavaScript through which you can determine whether the content on the DOM is completely loaded or not. Many a times you want to perform certain action when the DOM content loaded, because before that if you want to perform some action, certain things might fail. You might get certain values of an element as undefined. If you have a button and if that button content is not loaded on DOM and you want to query that, of course you're going to get undefined. So to save from that, many a times you might want to check whether the DOM content has loaded or not. Now with two kind of methodologies we have learned so far in terms of handling event, this is another thing that you need to remember. For DOM content load event handling, you have to use add event listener always. This particular code is never going to run, will never run. Let me just write it for you. If you do document dot on DOM content loaded, just like on click, right? Click an event. DOM content loaded is an event. So on click you did before. Similarly, I'm doing on DOM content loaded. Now I can assign a function to handle this event, isn't it? And inside this function, I can write console.log of DOM content loaded. So my expectation is if I refresh my browser now, the DOM content will get loaded and I should be able to see this console.log on my console. Let's see if it happens. Let me refresh it. Nothing really getting logged like that, right? I'm not seeing any DOM content loaded happening. It's because this is never going to work with this way of handling. But what will run if I try to handle this using the add event listener way that we have seen? So document dot add event listener. What kind of event it is? The event name is DOM content loaded, and then you have to pass the function to handle it. This function I'm writing over here, you can write it as a separate function outside as well. That's the best practice. Console.log of, same thing I'm going to print now. DOM content loaded. Excellent. Now if I go to browser, I'm already seeing DOM content loaded. If I refresh it, you see every time DOM content loaded. Interestingly, if you go to your network tab, you can see this is here DOM content loaded in 39 milliseconds. It also shows like how long it took for the DOM content to load, right? Just an information for you. Hope this information will be useful to you. Now we have dealt with a multiple type of events. One is like click event, DOM content loaded. Previous to videos, we have seen many other events like, on the key event. Now, every time this event happens, whether we are handling this event with add event listener or any other way, we get something called an event object as part of our event handler function. That event object is like a hidden treasure. It has lot more information that you can ever think of, and some of those information could be very useful when you are doing a project, you are trying to take some decision based on what kind of event is happening. So let's go into the anatomy of understanding what is there inside that event object and what are the things could be useful to us. All right, a new section. I have created another divider. We are learning about the event object, and to demonstrate that, I have added an input type text box, given a name called search, given an ID called search-id so that I can access it using document.getElementById, passing this ID, and there is a placeholder text. Let's go to the UI, just see that it's got rendered correctly. Yes, it does. Event object, there is a search thing. If I type on it, nothing really happened at this point of time because I have not written any script for it. Let's go to our index.js file. First thing first, I can get that element, right? This particular element by this ID. So I've created a search element equals to document.getElementById, passing this search ID. Now I can do this element, search element dot add event listener. By the way, from now onwards, most of the cases I'll be using add event listener only. At event listener. What kind of event that we'll be dealing with? Let's deal with a change event. Change means you type something inside that box and then tab out from that particular text box, means that you have changed what was there previously in that box, so a change event will occur. So whenever a change event occurs, I will be handling using the handler function. Let me assume that I'll be creating a function called handle change. Right now it is not there. If you go to browser, it's going to give you error, but we'll be creating this handle change immediately. So this function handle change, we can create like this. Now, if I do something over here, whenever I change some text into the text box and tab out, I will see this particular function getting executed. That much we know. But now we are interested to know what is there inside the event object. Now the question is, where is that event object? The event object is an implicit object that gets passed, that is given to you by JavaScript to all this handler function, and you can catch it using this particular parameter called event. You can give any name. You don't have to give the name event. You can give any name to this event of your choice. Now if I do console.log of this event, this is going to show me something as and when I type something, change something inside the text box and tab out. Let's see that. That's my UI. Let's say test. There is nothing yet. If I tab out, I see this event, isn't it? Let me expand. There are a bunch of things, and some of this we are definitely going to see. There's something called is trusted. There's something called bubbles true, cancel bubble false, then default prevented false, and then a lot of is attribute and also a type called change. So bunch of information are there inside this event object. The information that you will find really handy are if you want to know what kind of event has occurred. In our case, it is change event. So if I try to print event type with event dot type, I will see whenever I am typing and tabbing out, it is saying event type is change because it's a change event. Like that, I have added bunch of properties and see like how they will be useful. One of the thing is like target. Event.target says where exactly this event happened. So in our case, this change event is happening on the input text box. That's why it's saying event.target. Wherever the event is happening, on whatever the UI element that event is happening, what is the name of that UI element? If I go to the index.html file, our event is happening on this input box, and I have provided a name called search. That means it is going to give me the name search. It is going to return me the name search. Then how about the value that I'm entering inside the text box? I can do event.target.value. With that, I can get the value of that particular text box. So event.target, event.name, event.value. Event.target is the input box itself. Event.target.name is the name of that input box. Event.target.value is the value that I am inserting inside that input box. Okay, clear? Now there is another important thing called event.currentTarget. It has a big importance when we'll be talking about the bubbling. Event.target is the element that triggered the event. In this case, it is the input box. And event.currentTarget, it is the element that the event listener is attached to. What is the difference? In this case, we might not feel any difference. Like, okay, event listener look like is attached to this input box itself, right here. Then what is the difference? Why we have this current target separately? We will learn that when we learn about event bubbling. But for now, let's see the output. Let's type test again and do a tab out. This is all event details. Great. This is the target. Target means the input field itself, event.target. Event.target.name is the search. That's what we have given. Event.target.value is the test, what we have typed over here. Event type is change. Current target is also the input element because it is the same element where we have added the event handler, and it is the same element where the event is also occurring. But when you go to bubbling, we'll see the event occurring place, the target place, and where we have added the event handler could be two different places to take advantage of certain design pattern. We'll learn about those. We are going to do project also with those. Excellent. So I hope that you learned something new so far. Now, the last thing over here is, what if you do console.log of this? Oh my god, I'm getting back to the this keyword again. What it is going to do. So you have to remember this. Whenever you are referring this inside an handler function using the plain old JavaScript function, the this refers to the element itself on which you have added the event listener. So in this case, the element is what? It is the input field. So that means inside the handler function, which is handle change, if you are accessing this always refers to your input element itself. Type test over here. Look at the last console.log. That's for the this keyword. It is printing the input element itself. So inside an event handler, the value of this is always the element on which we have added the handler. Let us now start talking about one of the most confused yet very important topic called bubbling. And along with that, we're also going to learn something called capturing, event capturing, and also like event delegation. Now, event delegation is depending on bubbling and capturing. Bubbling is something which is a default behavior for the event. Capturing, which is switched off by default, very rarely used. I haven't really used it, so far actively in my project, but bubbling and delegation is definitely. So let's first understand what are those. Now, your HTML elements will be in some hierarchy in your DOM, right? There might be a div inside that, there is another div inside that, there is an ULLI. Each of the LI, there might be a button or maybe an anchor. Now, if you imagine this hierarchy in your brain, like there is a div, and then there is a button. Let's take an HTML like that. I have created a folder called path because this is where I'm going to explain, like through bubbling, capturing, how event takes its path from one element to another element. So I have just given the name as path. Inside that, I have created a HTML file, pretty blank now, nothing other than this particular h1 is there. JS file, which is also blank, only this console.log is there. CSS file is also blank. We are going to write. From the main HTML file, I have just created an anchor link to this event path.html file. So if I open my UI, I'm going to see a link called event bubbling, capturing, and delegation. If I click on this, it is going to a new HTML page, which is saying event bubbling, capturing, and delegation. This is the h1 I've given in that HTML file, and the respective JS file is printing this console.log. So everything is kind of set up and working. So every code about the bubbling, delegation, etc. that I'm going to do inside this path folders, event path.html and event path.js file. So first, the HTML file. Let me add one hierarchy of div. So here I have taken a div with an ID called grandparent. Inside that, there is another div with an ID called parent. Inside that, I have a button with an ID called child, and the button has a text called click me. This is a hierarchy, isn't it? The child button is inside parent, the parent is inside grandparent. Now, whenever you click on this particular button, click me, how event flows, what is the path that event takes by default? The button on which you have clicked is called the target. So from target, events start bubbling. Bubbling means the bubble, water bubble, right? Which always goes up and go and start going upwards towards its parent, reach till the document level. So that is what is called event bubbling. It happens every time by default whenever you are clicking on something, interacting with most of the event that your browser provides you. This is what is called event bubbling. So if I go to the JS file, try to define bubbling, the event starts from the target element. What is target element in our case is that button, and bubbles up through its ancestors, basically the parent. So in our case, it is like from the child, it will go to parent, then the grandparent. So the flow is going to be from child to parent to grandparent and then towards the document. Let's do a demonstration of this. Here you have this hierarchy. You have a grandparent, then parent, and then button. Let us query the button, this div, and add click handler on each of these things. On each of these things, we're going to add a click handler. Let's do that. First, on the grandparent. So what can we do? We can do document.getElement by ID and take by grandparent's ID, passing this ID, and then add a event listener on top of that. Something like this. Document.getElement by ID. This is a grandparent's ID, and then we have added an event listener. What kind of event we are handling is a click event, and what should happen when the click event happen? I am passing a function over here. We have learned about this, right? Very recently. Similarly, if I just copy this guys, after grandparent, there will be parent and change to parent and saying here instead of grandparent that parent is clicked. And again, I'll be copying. And here, instead of parent, I'll take child, come and say child and say child, right? So for each of this element, grandparent, parent, and button, I have now added a click handler so that when I click on them, I can see this console.log. But point is not about clicking on each of them. Point is about clicking on just this button and prove that event bubbles. If I click on this button and if there is a click handler on his parent, that particular click handler will be executed. If there is a click handler on grandparent, that will be executed. If there is a click handler on the document, that also will be executed. So the event that is happening on the child, if the parents are also handling those events through a function, those functions also will be executed. That's exactly what we have done. For each of the level, we have now added a handler so that we know is getting executed or not. Let's go ahead and see in the UI. I'll click on this click me. The moment I click on this click me, you saw that child clicked, parent clicked, grandparent clicked. I have not clicked on the outside divs. I have just clicked on this button. The moment I am clicking on this button, the event started from the target, which is the child clicked. Then it gets bubbled to its immediate parent, which is parent clicked. Then it goes upwards, gets grandparent click, that particular event handler executed. If I had a click handler on the document level, that also would have got executed. So this is how the event bubbles, and this gives you the power. Basically, this gives you that immense power that you can do now on each of the ancestors by handling the same event. If you want to do something, we are going to see some use cases about it, but right now I want you to get the concept. I hope the concept is clear. Now, just like bubbling, there is something else is also called capturing. What it is? Capturing. In bubbling, we know that the event starts from target and bubbles up. But in event capturing, the event flows from the outmost ancestors, meaning from the top down to the target element. It happens before the actual target handles the event. Okay, if you remember these two things, I think you understand it very well. If the capturing is enabled, capturing is disabled by default. If you are enabling the capturing, then the event will start flowing from the top towards the down towards the target before the target handles that event. So if I go back to our hierarchy now, our target is which one? Button, because on that only we are clicking. That means now the event will start flowing from my document, inside whatever is there in the hierarchy, finally coming to this div, finally coming to this div before this particular button's event handler gets called. So if I have an event handler over here on this div, if I am enabling for capturing, also if I am having an event handler on this div, I'm enabling for capturing. Same for this. The event handler will call for this div first, then this div first, then for the button, and then again it will go reverse wise because bubbling is by default enabled, isn't it? Because of bubbling, this event handler will call, this event handler will call, this event handler will call. This will look like the image that we are seeing over here. Now from this div is our grandparent div. This is the parent div. This is the child div. Inside the child div, there is a text note called click me, right? If the capture phase is enabled, whenever a click happen on this button, the button is the target. There are three phases that comes into picture. The first phase is called capture phase, which starts from the top and it goes down. Anytime if there is an event handler for this kind of event, here it is click event, is associated on any of this block on its way, those event handler will be executed. If there is an event handler on body, if there is an event handler on document, if there is an event handler on div, all this event handler will be executed if the capture is enabled on it before the event handler for actual button gets executed. The execution of the event handler on this button is called the target phase. That's the second phase. After that gets over, then the regular event bubbling starts, which is enabled by default. What is bubbling we have learned? Now it goes from the target towards upwards. So it will start from here, start going upwards. If there is an event handler associated with any of this, that will be executed. So start from top, target goes up. Remember this one. Take a screenshot of this, put it into your progress tracker, have a note, take some note like how it works. One important thing, don't forget to note, by default, bubbling phase is enabled. By default, capture phase is disabled. You can enable the capture phase if you want. So let us see an example with enabling the capture phase. By the way, we have done this, right? Document.getElement by ID, grandparent, addEventListener. Same thing we can do to enable the capture phase. Just one extra thing we need to do. You have to pass a true as the last argument. If you pass true, it means that you are enabling the capture phase. By default, it is false, so capture phase is disabled. So for grandparent, we have enabled. I'll just format this. Now I have enabled for all three: grandparent, parent, and for child. So now pass true for all of them when I am adding an event listener and when I'm declaring an event handler for them. So now if I take the button, the child as my target and click on it, now the capture phase is on. So it will start from the topmost, which is the grandparent. It will execute the event handler for that, say captured at grandparent, then it will say captured at parent, then it will execute capture at child. After that, the bubbling will start. For the bubbling, we already have given grandparent clicked, parent clicked, and the child clicked. Okay. So let's go ahead and start seeing this output. I'll click on click me. Captured at grandparent came first. Captured at parent came second. Captured at child came then. After that, from child again started child clicked, then went to parent, then went to grandparent. So first came like that, top to bottom, then again bottom to top, just like how we have learned from this particular image. So understood what is bubbling, understood what is capturing. Capturing usage is very rare. Bubbling usage is there. It is more evidently there when you talk about event delegation. Let's talk about event delegation then. What is delegation means? Delegation means I'm giving you some work. Brother, you do this work. But you are already overwhelmed with so many other work. So you don't have any bandwidth to do this. You are giving that work to somebody else whom you trust. So that means you are delegating that particular work to somebody else. In case of event also, it can delegate what it is supposed to do when an event occur, that particular handler function. It can delegate that thing to somebody else. And here the event delegation, the entire design of event delegation we can achieve using this concept of bubbling that we have learned. So what is event delegation? If I tell you, like, if you define, you will be defining in this way. It is a technique where you add a single listener to a parent element. Remember, this technique is where you add a single event listener to a parent element instead of adding individual event listeners to all its children. So if you have a hierarchy, you add the event listener to the topmost parent and you don't add any event listener to the bottom child. Now what will happen if I go back to my image again? Let's assume you have not added event listener to this button. You have not added an event listener to this parent. You just have added an event listener to this grandparent. By default, bubbling phase is on. By default, capture phase is off. Now you clicked on this button. Your target is this. Once you clicked on this button, what JavaScript is going to do I have an event listener on this? Oh no, I don't have. No problem. I'll go to its parent because I know to bubble. Do I have an event listener over here? No, I don't have. No problem. I'll go to its parent. Do I have an event listener here? Yes, I have. So it will execute that event listener. Inside this event listener, now you can write your logic that might manage this div, that might manage this button. How? We know by the DOM manipulation that from parent we can reach out to children, from children we can reach out to grandchildren. We have learned all this thing in the last video when we learned about a DOM manipulation. So it means from the same place, from the topmost place, I can now control every children under me and do something with them. This particular pattern is what you need to know in DOM. Because with DOM, we understood how to query it, how to manipulate it in the individual level. But when you're going for a bigger and complex project, you need to know about the design pattern. Event delegation is one of the design pattern where you unnecessary Don't add those event listeners to each and every element. Rather, attach them at the parent level and control it for the entire hierarchy or sub hierarchy. This is what is called event delegation. We are going to take multiple examples and learn from it. By the way, you are seeing the kind of effort I put in terms of teaching you, creating the content, which is really quality one. Please support me by subscribing to tapaScript. Talk about this channel, talk about 40 days of JavaScript initiative to your co-developer, to your friends, because the more you talk about it, more people will come to know about this initiative, and I will really feel happy after putting so much of effort. Thank you very much again for supporting tapaScript. All right, so to continue, this event delegation is, that's why, is very, very powerful and very, very efficient. Let's take some example. Let's go to our event path.html, and as it is a new section, I'll again add a horizontal rule, and over here I am adding a ULLI, unordered list. It has an ID called item list. Inside that there are two list item 1, item 2. Now with bubbling, I'm going to do the coding in a way that if I click on this list item, I want to know what is the text here. If I click on this list item, I want to know what is the text here. Without event bubbling, what you will be doing, you will be adding ID to each of this li. You will do document.getElement by ID for each of this li, and then you can retrieve this. I know, because this is what we have learned in the DOM manipulation also. Intentionally, I didn't talk about bubbling because that belongs to event and we are learning it now. Now with event bubbling, what you can do, you can add the listener at the parent, this particular UL. And if you add it over here, now imagine if somebody is clicking on this li, with event bubbling mechanism, by default, your event will be going up and this event listener that you have added to the UL will execute. Now inside that event listener function, you can do something to access this item 1. When somebody clicking on this li, you can do the same thing again, right? Isn't it? So let's do that code. Let's go to eventpath.js file. So if I have to get this UL by its ID, I will do document.getElement by ID item list. Now if I have to add an event listener over here, I'll be doing add event listener. What kind of event? Click event. What am I going to do with the click event? When the click event happen, I'm going to create a function. So for that, I have this function. I'm writing an arrow function. You can write your plain old JavaScript function. We have learned that this event handler gets an event object already. Excellent, because now I'll be using the event object. We have learned about the event object. Inside this, what I can do, this is the fun. Event.target means on which your event has happened. If it has a tag name which is matching to be li, because under UL we have li, then do a console.log, say you clicked on event.target dot, you can do inner text or text content, right? To get the text, we have learned this text content. Now I have added an event listener on the UL. Now any of the li gets clicked, in the hierarchy event will bubble up. This particular function will get called, correct? As per the event bubbling. In this function, I will check where exactly the click happened. If I click on the first li, okay, event.target.tag name is li. Yes, it is li. I'll say you clicked on this. If I click on the second li, event.target.tag name is li. So I will put the text content of it, isn't it? So my code will work like a charm now. If I click on item 1, just check that. See, you clicked on item 1. If I clicked on item 2, you clicked on item 2. The best part over here, I have not added any ID to these guys. I have not queried any of the IDs. I have not added any of the event listener. Now I am writing quality code. I am not writing code which is messy. I am not writing extra code which will be difficult to manage tomorrow. I am not writing extra code which can include bugs tomorrow. I am writing clean code. This is how the bubbling is helpful. Another thing, reusability. If I had added ID to each of these li and access the li by the ID to print what exactly their text content on the click on them, I had to add the click handler to each of them, right? Then if you had added another li after this, let's say another li, I say item 3, again you have to add an ID for it, again you have to add a click handler for it. No, now you don't have to do it. You don't have to do any code change. Best part, no code change, because if I click on li now, event will bubble up. It will go to its parent. Parent has already having a event listener. This function will execute. I clicked on li, last li. That means that is the target. Is that a li? Yes. So it will go inside the console.log and it will print this text content, which is item 3. Are you getting how to go step by step to create things? This is how you should be thinking and doing. This is how you will be writing clean code with plain JavaScript. Don't just add ID to every element. Don't just add click handler to every element. Take advantage of the design pattern. The design pattern, that's what we're doing here, is called event delegation. So now if I go to the UI, click on the item 3, I'll see you clicked on item 3. As many items you want to add, it will work. I hope this is very, very clear to you. This is crystal clear to you. You will never ever forget what is event bubbling, what is capturing, what is delegation. So guys, do one thing. In the progress tracker, if you don't have the progress tracker link, it's in the description of this video. Please go ahead, download it for free. Please write down what is the difference between a capturing and the bubbling, and what exactly delegation means. I have already given you the definition. And can you write one more example of event delegation by yourself? And let's see like how do you do it. While this bubbling is great thing and it is activated by default, there might be a situation where you might not want the bubbling to happen, and that's the time you might want to stop it. And the way that you stop it is called event dot stop propagation. So for example, let us take one more HTML fragment. This time I have a div which is a parent div. I'm calling it as father because I already have a parent ID, so don't want to conflict it. And then another button which is like a child, I'm calling it as son because don't want to conflict it. So if I see it on the UI, I have this parent and this child is the click me. If I click on it, nothing happens. Okay, that's fine. Now let's go ahead and add these two lines. Document.getElement by ID father, which is this one. It will give me this div. I have added an event listener over here. I'm saying that parent clicked. For son also, I'm saying child clicked. Okay, so son is this guy, this particular button. Now if I click on this button, by default, first the child click will happen, then the parent click will happen, isn't it? So if I click on this click me, you see child clicked happen and then the parent clicked happen. But many a times what will happen, you just want the clickability on this. You don't want the event handler which is there on the wrapped div to be executed. That is the time you have to tell your JavaScript that, hey, I don't want to propagate this event up. And this is what is called stop propagation, through which you will tell that to JavaScript is called stop propagation. So how do we do it? To do that, wherever you want to stop the propagation from, for example, whenever I'm clicking on this child button or the son button, I want to stop the propagation from here itself. So I'll be writing saying e dot stop propagation, this particular function. Now if I click on this button, I'll see only child clicked. I'm not getting parent clicked again. But if I click outside, I'll get parent clicked. You see, parent clicked because event handler is added to the parent and the child both. But before clicking on the child, it was not only executing the child, but with event bubbling, it was also executing the parent. Now I have told that at the child level itself, I don't want to propagate this event up when somebody is clicking on the child, so the parent one is not getting executed. Parent one will be executed only when you click on the parent, otherwise it won't be. That's another topic, how to stop event propagation or the bubbling. I hope it is clear to you. We have learned that event bubbling is a default behavior for your elements, right? Like that, there are other default behaviors for some of the elements that you might be already observing. For example, if you have a link, an anchor tag, and if there is an href attribute that point to some web page, if you click on that link, it will go to that web page, isn't it? That's the default behavior of an anchor tag. Then if you have a form, if you submit the form with a submit button in it, by default, it will try to execute the action of that particular form. So these are all default behaviors. If you don't do anything, it will work in this way. But there are circumstances where you might want to stop them. You might want to do something else instead of doing the default behavior. So let's talk about the event defaults. Another important item to know and to know how to take care of it. For that purpose, I have now created a folder called default. Inside that, there is an event-default.js file and then event-default.html file. Event.html file doesn't have anything. I have not added anything so far inside the body, to be very precise. And event-default.js file only having one console.log. Just like last time, I'll go to index.html file, go at the end and add an anchor tag with a href attribute pointing to this default event default.html file. Okay, so that if I click on this link, it goes over there. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So this is my main page. I have event default behavior. If I click on it, okay, it's printing event defaults. There is nothing inside the body, so it's a blank page. Let's go ahead and start putting some things over there. So inside event default.html file, I'm going to put an anchor tag with a href. Here is an anchor tag with a href that goes to my website called tapasadhikari.com, having an ID called website link. It opens up in a new tab, so the target is underscore blank, and it says go to website. So if I now see the page, I have this go to website link. If I click on this guy, it's going to open a new tab and my website will open up. So that's the usual behavior. Okay. The default behavior is to navigate to the page that is defined using the href attribute. Now, if I want to override that default and want to prevent it from performing its default action, what exactly I have to do? Document.getElement by ID website link means I'll get that anchor. On this, I can do add event listener. What kind of event? Click event. What am I going to do? So I have to pass a function. So now I have this. I'll just do console.log of navigating to website. So if I go to my web page, if I click on this, it will navigate to the website, plus there will be a console.log. It is navigating to the website. If I come back over here, I'll see a console.log navigating to website. I don't want this navigation to happen. I want this console.log to happen, or maybe other console.log to happen, but I don't want this navigation to happen. For that purpose, simple enough, I have to come over here. I have this event, right? E. So E dot prevent default I can call, and then I can possibly change this console.log to something says default link behavior is prevented now. Now if I click on it, it's not going to go to the website, rather it's going to just print this console.log. So let's see that. I'll close this. If I click on it, see, it's not going to the website anymore. It is just printing default link behavior prevented. Now clicking on this, doing some DOM related activities, you want to show a table over here, you can show. Even if your anchor tag is having an href, it is not going to perform its default action. It's not going to go to that particular web page. The same thing we can do with forms as well. So after this link, I have now taken a form, a very simple form having an ID called login form. There are two type of input. One is a text, another is a password. And there is a button called submit. I have posted required because I want to make sure that user is giving input to both the username and password. Now let's see on the UI. Let's see their default behavior first. So the default behavior of a form is whenever I'm putting some input to this and doing a login, this will do a refresh. The moment it refreshes, you will see a question mark over here. It tried to execute its action attributes value. I have not provided any, so it's a blank. So if I do this, you saw there is a refresh. It says that changing a password. It says there is a reload, right? If I do it again, see, it's a reload. Now you're also seeing this question mark. There is nothing after this question mark because I have not provided any value for the action attribute. But I don't want this to happen. Let's say I want to prevent this behavior. The same thing, exactly same thing I have to do. I have to take the event, do event dot prevent default. And then I can probably read the value of this username, this password. I can do some validation on the client side, then I can do something on the UI. That's my choice. But going back to the code, coming back to the JS file, the code that I'll be writing is document.getElement by ID login form. Then I'll be again doing addEventListener. Here, what is the event I'm listening to? I'm clicking on the submit button. So it's a submit event, not a click event. Please remember. And then I will do again the function. I will again pass E, and over here I can do E dot prevent default. So now if I go back, refresh thing, I'll give some username, give some password, clicking on login. See, it's not refreshing anymore. Not at all. You might feel that nothing is happening again, right? So if I go back to my code once again, I just add a console.log over here saying form submission prevented. Go back to my UI, give some username, give some password, click on login. It won't refresh, but it will log my console.log. So it means that I can now do any of my business logic that I want over here. After e.prevent default, my form won't perform its default behavior, which is like on submit, executing the action and reloading the page. I hope the prevent default is quite clear to you. Great. So we have covered till here everything. Now we have just two more things to go. One is custom events and then doing our projects. Let's learn about custom events. So this click event, mouse over event, on change event, then key up event, key press event, all these events are browser's own event. The fascinating part is you can create your own event. And when you have a bigger application, a complex application, you might want to create your own event, and that event can do some business logic for you. So let's understand first what are the steps to create your own event. To demonstrate that, I have created a new folder called custom, and there is a custom.html which is having nothing inside the body yet. There is a custom event.js which is blank, and I have loaded this JS inside this HTML already. You can see it over here. And then in the index.html file, I have added a link to this custom HTML so that when I click on it, I can launch that page. It will be blank for now. There is nothing over there because we have not added anything. Okay, first let's understand how to create custom events. What are the steps? That's the vital. Then we'll do an example, a mini project with this. I'll go to custom event.js. Let us write down 3 steps that's required. So the step 1 is you have to create a custom event. Create a custom event. That is a step 1. Step 2, after creating the custom event, listen to the custom event. Listen to the custom event. And the step 3 is something called dispatch, dispatching the custom event. These are the very, very simple 3 steps. Now let's do the first step, creating a custom event. Let us create an event for user login. Whenever user logged into an application, we want to create an event for that particular user who logged in. Now, best part is JavaScript already gives you an API to create custom event. It's called custom event itself. It's again a constructor function called custom event. As it is a constructor function, to create an instance of it, you have to use the new keyword in front of it. So if I do new custom event, I will get an instance of a new custom event. So I can have it like const my event equals to new custom event. Custom events, the first argument that you have to pass is the event name. So we are creating our own event for user login. So we'll be creating an event name, say user logged in. Okay, whenever you are creating an event, you can always create in this way, like the event just happened, like so user logged in, it's a past tense, user clicked, like that. The naming convention you can keep, and then you can pass an object through which you can pass certain detail. Whenever this particular event occur, you can retrieve those detail back. It's your data. You can do the data passing. So the data passing you can do through this detail property. There is a detail property. This takes an object as a value, and you can pass anything that you want. So I want to pass the username of the user who has authenticated or logged in. Let's say this is tapaScript user, and maybe the role of the user, let's say admin. So tapaScript user as an admin logged in. So why I am now generating an user logged in event. This is what I have created. So this is my step 1. Very simple step 1. So far with me? Now, if you have this event, this user logged in event, how to listen on this event? If you have a click event, how do you listen to that event? Very simple. We have been doing it for last 1 hour. So document dot add event listener. What is the event? User logged in event. What do you want to do? I want to do something. Where do you want to do something? Inside this function, I'll say console.log user login detected, and here I can print e.detail. Your username. That means this particular user has logged in, right? So this is how you handle it. And then the last thing what you do, you dispatch the event. How do you dispatch the event? A single line of code. Document has a method called dispatch event, pass your event, which is my event. That's it. That's how you create a custom event. Isn't it very simple? So whenever user logged in happen, you are printing who is logging in, and you're dispatching it from over here, right? So whenever this my event is happening, my event is nothing but this user logged in event. Whenever it is happening, you are actually doing something. I have added this event at the document level, document.addEventListener. So whenever my page is getting loaded, I'll be able to see this console.log, because whenever my page is getting loaded, user logged in event will occur. User logged in event has a detail called this particular username. I am printing this one. So let's see. Let's open this up without writing any HTML so far. You see, user logged in detected tapaScript. If I refresh, I'll be able to see it again. User logged in detected tapaScript. Cool, na? So I've created a custom event. Now let's do a simple project. I'll go to the HTML file. Let's add a p tag over here. Say welcome. And then let's add a button over here. Say on click, I'll say login user. And let's put a username, say tapas. And we'll give a text called login. So if I go to UI now, I have this login button and it says welcome. Imagine that you have a login button over here at the header, right? Before you logged in, the header just says welcome. Once you log in, you click on login and authentication happen. It find out who exactly authenticated. I have passed that username already, right? And it shows that username over here. Welcome Tapas, right? After a successful login. Now, if I click now, nothing is going to really happen apart from this error saying that login user is not defined, because I have not defined, of course. So let's go ahead and define login user. So I'll go to the JS, coming over here. I will define function login user. Let me copy the one as it is, paste it over here, and it takes a username. Let us take the username, and this is where I can write the logic of login user. Now I want to create a custom event for user login. So whenever user logged in, I can pass certain details of the user. In this case, it could be username, so that whenever somebody is listening to the user logged in event, they can do something with the details, just like whatever we've done some time back. So let's create an event. Const event equals to new custom event. This is the way we can create the event. The event name is user logged in, and then it can take an object. Inside that, I can have something called detail, and as a value of detail, I can just pass this username. I'm not doing username colon username because I know with object I can use a shorthand. And after that, I can do document dot dispatch event, pass this event. So this event is now registered with my document. Excellent. So login user, whenever you click on it, I am creating this event and I am dispatching this event. Now, if someone is listening to this event, let's say at the document level again, I am adding this addEventListener. I am passing the same user logged in event. What do you think, guys? Any free course will teach you like this, holding everything with this much detailing? Rarely they are. Okay. But I'm very happy doing this 40 days of initiative for you. I want you guys to learn. You don't have to really buy pricey course to learn JavaScript in depth. If you have that curiosity to learn, you will learn from this as well. So now over here again, I need the handler function. So I'll pass this event, this time arrow function. So here now from this event, I can take out this user, right? I can do e dot detail dot username, right? I have given username. Yes, username. So I get this username. So I have the user. Now I have this p tag over here, right, with an ID. So I can do document.get element by ID welcome will give me this p tag. This gives me this p tag. I can do dot inner text or text content on it, and I can now say, hey, welcome, comma, $user. Fun, no? If this event happen, I'm listening to this event and I'm changing this welcome message to welcome, comma, the actual user who logged in. Let's see it in the UI. So this is a simple project using the custom event. If I click on login, I can see welcome Tapas. You see that? Great, na? So I have created my event, user logged in event. Using the user logged in event, I can now take care with the details, modifying something on my header like navbar and all these cases, or the sidebar. That's the power of custom event. You can create any number of custom event you want, make use of them. Now let's get into our project, a project that will be doing with everything that we have learned so far. And then I'll be talking about the task assignment, which itself is another project that you need to do. So what is our project about? Our project is about creating a FAQ system, frequently asked questions. For example, what is JavaScript? JavaScript is a scripting language used to create dynamic content, okay? Now, if I click on what is DOM, DOM is a document object model representing the page structure. Great. If I click on what is 40 Days of JavaScript, it's initiated by the tapaScript family to win over JavaScript with fundamentals and code. Great. Now, if I click outside, I see everything is getting collapsed. So that's our project, and we're going to do this project with everything that we have learned so far, with all the events and everything. Let's get started. So first thing in our HTML, let's define the structure. So what is the structure? Let us start with a static structure, and then I'll tell you like how you can make this structure even dynamic. Okay. So I need maybe an outer div to hold everything. Inside that, I need a div to hold this question and a div to hold this answer, right? And then I can actually repeat the structure for each of this item. Let's start creating that. For that, I'll go to faq.html. Let me close every other things. And inside this faq.html file, as you can see, I have created a div called FAQ, main div. Inside this div, this main div, I have another div. This is my first FAQ. In the first FAQ, I have a question and the answer. The question is, what is JavaScript? The answer is this particular answer. And the same structure, this div to div, the same structure has been repeated for other two questions as well. Ideally, you won't be statically putting this. You will be taking this question and answer, maybe an array of object. You will be iterating through that array of object and you will be creating this structure dynamically, so that tomorrow you don't have to come and touch the HTML. You will just add an entry to your array. The new div will be created automatically. I have already taught you how to create this div, how to do these things, so you can take care of this by yourself because you have learned about it. My focus is about that expand collapse using event bubbling and all these things that we have learned, right? So this particular structure, let's learn it once more. It has a top level div which has a class called FAQ. Inside that, each of the question answer are independent divs. In each of the question answer div, there is a question div and there is an answer div, and that repeats for each of this. See, repeats for each of this. Each of the things we call as FAQ item. Inside that, there is a question, there is an answer. That's it. Now our job would be to do the expand collapse logic for this. I am not going to add click handler for each of these questions. We are clicking on the question and then only the things are getting expanded, isn't it? So I am not going to add click handler on each of them. Rather, I am going to add a handler on this topmost div, and then when somebody clicking on this question, I want that event to be delegated up, and then I am going to do a lot of things around that. So let's go ahead and inside my JS file, first is I have to take this div. Okay, there is no ID. I could have added an ID and get this div by its ID, but there is a class added. Let me do it using this query selector for now. It is FAQ. So over here, I can do const FAQ equals to document.querySelector.FAQ is a class selector I am doing. Now on this FAQ, I can add an event listener. What kind of event listener I'll be adding? I'll be adding a click event listener. What will happen? When somebody click on it, that's what I have to handle inside this function. What I'll be writing inside this function, what I have to do, what is my logic? My logic is whenever there is an event happening, whenever this particular event happens, from the event target, I can get the current element. So whenever I click on this question, from this element, I can go to its parent element, which is like this one, FAQ item. From there, I can query the answer using this class so that I can get this answer. Correct, na? I can get this, I can get the answer, I can get this element. If I get this element, then what I can do, I can play with my collapse, expand all these things pretty easily. So again, the logic is I have added a click handler over here. I have not added a click handler on each of this question because I'm going to click on the question. But if I click on the question now, what will happen? I am going to get the parent of it, which is this one, then want to query this particular element over here, which is having the answer, and just want to expand that particular element. So first thing first, let's take the current item under which the question is there. Item equals to, I have the event, I can do a target, event.target will be the question on which I have clicked, and then from here I can get the parent element. So I have the parent element. Now from parent element, I can use the query selector. Using the answer query selector can get the current answer. Basically, I am at this level now. From here, if I do a query selector of answer, I'll get this particular element. Okay, so let's do that. So current answer will be my current item. On that query selector, I got the current answer. Now after getting the current answer, I can simply do current answer dot class list dot toggle and say a class called show that I am adding. If I go to faq.css file, I have already added a class called .answer.show, which means it's a display block. In the previous video, that's project we have used hidden. Here I'm using show. So simple enough. If I go back to my UI right now, if I click on what is JavaScript, it's showing. If I click on what is DOM, it is showing. If I click on what is 40 days of JavaScript, it is showing. If I click on this, it is collapsing because it's a toggle, right? Show is there, show is not there. If I'm clicking outside, nothing is getting collapsed. That functionality I have not done yet. I have to click outside to collapse everything. Now to clicking outside means I have to add an event listener, click event listener at the document level. That is why it is kind of completely outside, right? So I will do document dot add event listener. What kind of event listener it is? Click event listener. And here what I'm going to do is going to do a function execution. And inside this function execution, first thing I'm going to find out const all the answers. How can I find out? These are the basic things we have learned already with the selectors. Document dot query selector all, and the selector that I can pass is dot answer, that is the class name got added to all the answers. Along with whatever is open, we'll also have a class called show. This is what we are adding over here. If it is closed, then the show class won't be added because we are toggling. So that is having all the answers that are now expanded. Now for all these elements that are now expanded, I can run a for each dot for each, take each of this answer as element, and for each of this answer I can go to its class list and I can remove the show class. If I remove the show class, it is by default hidden. Okay, so document.addEventListener click means I am anywhere clicking on the document, I am invoking this, getting all the answers that are opened, looping through them, and just removing the show classes. So if I go back to my UI now, let's do it again. Expand, expand, expand. Nothing is happening. Why? Because these three things are also inside document, isn't it? So if I am adding a click handler on document, it means the click handler, the documents click handler is also invoking over here as well, isn't it? So this is the kind of scenario that you will be facing a lot. A lot means a lot. So it means that I have to now go back to my this click handler and have to intelligently put a few things. This particular click handler should happen for what? It should happen for only this question thing. So I have to take care of this click handler only for question, correct? So first let's put that particular logic. I'll put a if block over here and end the if over here. What it is saying that if wherever I'm clicking, if it has a question class, then only do all these things. Otherwise, don't do it. That's the first thing. If I'm dealing with the question, I have to do e dot stop propagation. Okay. Now if I come back and now click on it, can you see this working? See, excellently working. All these things are working. If I click on it, if I click on it, if I click on it, if I click outside, everything is working. So you understood what I did. Let's do a recap. Document level, I have added a click handler. On the click handler, I am finding what are those answers which is already having the show class added. For each of those answers, I am just removing it. While doing that, the document is everything, right? These questions, each of these things, each of these div questions was also getting impacted. So what was happening, whenever I was clicking on this question, the event used to get bubbled. Event used to get bubble, it used to go till the document level. At the document level, I already having a click event handler, so this will get executed. So nothing will get expanded because show is going to get removed from everything. Now only way I can make it work is whenever I'm clicking on this question, I don't want my event to get bubbled up. If it is not going to get bubbled up, this particular documents click handler will never be called. That's the reason I have to now stop the propagation if I am dealing with the question. This is why this if block is there, and this is why I am doing the stop propagation. That is why things are working together. That is why things are working well. Got the point? Is it easy now? So the entire recap of the project is I have this faq.html. I have taken this structure, it's my choice. Now whenever somebody clicking on this one, I can easily go to this FAQ over here because that is where my event handler is, correct? Now this FAQ will not propagate the event further at the document level because I have given a stop propagation over here. So if I click on that FAQ, there is no chance, no way that this particular event will be bubbled up and come here. So whenever I'm clicking on the question, I'm taking the answer element and I'm doing a toggle for that. Whenever I'm clicking out, I'm getting all the answers that are having answer.show and just removing the show from it so that they're getting closed. And that is the reason it is now working exactly beautifully. You see this? If I click out, all right. So I hope it was useful to you. Let's look into the task. Okay, so the task that you have to do is to create a dynamic tabular interface. Basically the tabs, you have seen the tabs, right? So build a clean, accessible tab component. Accessible means you can access it using the keyboard as well. Where clicking on a tab header displays the corresponding tab content. It mimics the real world use case like dashboard, profile setting, pricing plan, etc. Requirements. Clicking on a tab title shows the corresponding tab content below. Only one tab content is visible at a time. That means once you click on the second one, first one's tab content won't be shown. The active tab should be in such a way that it can be differentiated from the inactive tabs. Add a keyboard shortcut pressing 1, 2, 3 numbers. You can switch between tags. So for example, if the key is 1, switch to this tab, key is 2, switch to this tab, key is 3, switch to this tab. Then use event delegation to handle tab clicks. We have seen in the project and many other places. Use class list to manage the active state. Create a custom event to broadcast when the tab is changed. Okay. User logged in event we have created. Take a clue from that and use the stop propagation if needed. Do this task. Create a GitHub repo. Come to Discord. Task assignment channel is there. Just post your task. I'll be very happy to review this one. So see you over there. I know it was a long video, but it was required because JavaScript events is not a simple thing to learn, not a simple thing to teach even. There are way more things that you can even catch up from MDN or any other videos or any other tutorials. But this should give you a very strong ground to play with events. And please do the project that I have done again by yourself. Do the task. If you are stuck, come to Discord, ask about it. Let's get help from community. Let's get help from me. And that's how you learn. So that's all about the events. See you again in the next video. That will be our 20th video. 20th of 40 days of JavaScript, 50% line we are about to cross. See you there.